Hopefully I got all of that right there, Craig. Craig, welcome. How are you, my friend?
Oh, very good, Will. That's lovely. Thank you for sharing all of that. And yeah, we love what you're doing here and really looking forward to having a chat with everyone this evening.
No problem, mate. The floor is yours, my man.
All right, nice one. Well, thank you everyone for being here. And again, thanks to Will for setting this up. It's a great platform for us to share and connect. The topic that I'm covering this evening is having a look at those supports for transition between high school and tertiary education. Particularly for me, I'm always interested in the role that technology can play in that space. And of course, AI are the two letters that have seemed to be said more than any others in the past couple of years about what tech can do and where it's going. So we thought we'd just share a few ideas this evening that might sort of just start some conversations and get some ideas going in this space. I'll say at the outset too, I've put together all of the resources we talk about here and the presentation up on my website. So I've got a website called the Universal Sandpit. It's got free AI tools that I've built that you can just use in classrooms or at home. And I've got a special page that supports this webinar that you'll see up there called AI Support for Neurodivergent Teens. So that's just to let you know, if I run through some things a bit too quickly, you'll know you can certainly find resources afterwards to follow on from there. All right, so when we think about the sorts of things that our young people, as they're moving, into tertiary education, might have challenges with, but also might find some real success with, is around this idea of executive functioning. And those are the brain processes that help us to do things like plan and organize, schedule our time. It's our working memory, all the information we can hold in our head and work with. Metacognition, which is that idea of thinking about our thinking, recognizing when we might be making a mistake and thinking about what the expectations of something are. And emotional regulation, so being able to manage our feelings and how we're responding to situations. Now, there is a lot more to executive functioning that you can sort of dive into, but I thought for the purpose of this webinar tonight, we might just stick to these 5 broad areas, and I'm going to show you some AI prompts and some tools that can really tap into these different areas. One thing that I think it's worth saying from the start is there are a lot of tech tools that will already be a really good support to young people without necessarily jumping straight into AI. There are so many apps that just come built in on our phones these days and our laptops and so on that have some really good executive functioning supports. Now, these are apps from my iPhone, but certainly if you've got another type of phone, you'll have very similar apps on there as well. Things like reminders, the reminder app now, because these things just keep getting better every year, you can have location-based reminders. So I've got reminders for me that I set that's like, when I get to the car, make sure that I've got my bag, or when I get to the shops, make sure that I've got my shopping list to get out and look for things. So you can actually set on your reminders that will trigger when you get to a certain location, which is very useful. You can also have shared reminders between family members these days, which again, if you're a parent and you're supporting a teenager, it might be really nice just to help them to navigate their reminders and also to model how you use reminders in your life so that they're seeing the sorts of things that they might use to help to support themselves as well. And yeah, you can also collaborate on those with other people outside the family as well. You've then got notes. The classic notes app seems very simple, but you can do so many things with it. Shopping lists, of course. You can now, in notes apps, add images, of things that you might want to get from the shops. You can organize folders of notes into different categories. And for me, on my iPhone and on my MacBook, I can have ChatGPT, which is one of the dominant AI apps, I can have it talk directly to my notes now. So if I've been making notes on my phone, I can actually get ChatGPT to look at those and use them when it's sort of doing things for me, which we'll talk a bit more about later. So there's all sorts of interesting things that we can already do with these apps, calendars, events that you can set that then turn into reminders, so you can be reminded about things on certain times. And again, adding locations to events so that the app can estimate how long it might take to get somewhere. So you might pop in that you've got a TAFE session at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, and you put in the location, and it will automatically calculate how long you might need to take to get there if you're driving, for example. And those are just built-in apps these days that can do all those little extra things. So it is worth having a play with some of those apps and seeing what they can already do before we get into the emerging experimental world of AI, which is what we're going to have more of a talk about now. Now, there are many different apps, of course, within the AI space. These are probably some of the three big ones: ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, and Google Gemini. I'll mostly be talking about ChatGPT tonight, but I'm also very agnostic about this stuff. Like, whatever you're using, whatever's good for you, if you've got a subscription or if you've got a free account for any of these, just go with that, because the things I'm sharing can be used across anything. All right, so we're going to have a look at the first part of executive functioning now: planning and organization. So if our goal here to support our young people is to help break a task down into bite-sized sequenced actions, and I'm thinking here about the jump often from high school into tertiary education, is that you start to get tasks with a lot more parts to them. When you've got a high school assignment, it might be write an essay about this, or do a book report about this. Suddenly, when you're at TAFE, say, and you're doing a building course, or you're at uni doing something, assignments start to take on many, many different layers, and that can be quite overwhelming to some of our young people. So I'm interested in how AI can break big things down into smaller parts. So I use a prompt like this. I'll say to AI, act as my assignment breakdown coach. Now here's the task. And then I'll paste the assignment in, or even upload a PDF or a Word document that the course has given me. And then I say, list every sub-step in the right order and try to identify anything that I might forget and estimate the minutes that each of those steps are going to take. Because this is what we want with executive functioning support, is to break something big down into its smaller parts and then help us know how long each of those tasks should take, so we're not spending an hour on something that should only take 5 minutes, because that's where our young people can get burnt out, or they're not sure how much time they should invest in some of these tasks. So I'll give you an example of what this looks like. Let's take a very overwhelming assignment. You don't have to read all of that. It's just a TAFE assessment for building and construction certificate that I pulled from online. Now it's a multi-step task. I'm going to copy all of that into ChatGPT, so you can see here the prompt: act as my assignment breakdown coach. Here's the task. I've pasted that in. Okay, so that's there. I've got the whole assignment pasted there. And then I want it to list every step, identify things I'll forget, and estimate the minutes per step. And what that's going to do is it says to me, and this you'll see in a moment, I'll show you the screen recording. It says, absolutely, Craig, I'll be your breakdown coach. Let's nail this assignment. And then it will break down each of these parts of the assignment that I need to do step by step. And it gives a time allocation to each of those. It then says to me, don't forget some of these things that you might overlook or you might not think about. And it just really tries to scaffold what's expected. Now, this is something that you don't get in the original assignment, the assignment's just saying, here's all the things you need to do. This tries to be a guide on the side where it's really trying to break it down. And then it's got a checklist at the bottom. Just make sure you're covering off on each of these things so that you get, maximum points for what you're submitting and maximum learning out of that assignment. So that's one way that we can take a task and break it down into its smaller bits. I'll show you a few other options. You've got something like Goblin Tools, which if you haven't used that, I'm going to show you how that works in a moment, and a couple of others. But let's start with Goblin Tools. It's a free website, and it's got this platform that it calls Magic to Do. And what you can do is paste in that assignment, so the same assignment that I used earlier. You can choose how spicy you want the breakdown. So do you want it really broken down into many, many parts, or do you just want it broken down into a few? I've picked the average number here. Now, it's going to break that task down, but instead of it being like ChatGPT text, it's made little tick boxes that I can now go through each of the steps of that task and tick them off as I do them. And if I need to break down any part of that task even further, I hit the wand, and then it takes that step and breaks it down into further steps as well, So you're given this checklist to work through a task in a really visual way, and you can just keep breaking things down into smaller and smaller parts as you might need, And again, that's going to be based depending on what the assignment is, depending on what you need, and then you can just start to tick things off there. So that's Goblin Tools. I really like that. It's a big success within the neurodivergent community, and lots of people are using that at the moment. I'll show you a tool that is maybe not as well known, but I really like. It's called AYOA, and it's a mind map tool. It's a visual mind map tool that has AI built into it. So what you're seeing here is AYOA, and it's got, I copied in the assignment exactly the same as I did for ChatGPT and then Goblin Tools. I've now dropped it into AYOA, and it creates a visual mind map of the different things you should consider for this assessment. And the AI actually then sort of breaks it down further. So you can see there's a part of the assessment that's about site preparation. It's going to break it down into smaller parts and then give you explanations of each of those different concepts. Now, why is this useful? It's all about a universal design for learning approach where we're trying to use whatever works for the young person. If they're very text-based and they love reading and they love seeing it all as written text, ChatGPT is such a good option. If there's someone who loves tick boxes, Goblin Tools is great there. If they love visuals and mind map sort of structures, then something like AYOA is really useful. You can also drop a YouTube video into AYOA, and it will create a visual mind map based on everything that's talked about in that YouTube clip, which is very, very cool. So, and the other thing I'll just mention here, I've got this little app called Task Simplifier. That's linked on my website. That's just a little app that I've made myself, and you'll be able to use that afterwards to do a similar job. Will, there's a question there from Kim. Will we be able to get a copy of this video after?
Yeah, definitely. I just put it into the chat. Yeah, totally. There'll definitely be videos, all of that type of stuff. So check it out. Feel free to share it around. No problem at all.
Awesome, Will. Thank you. And thanks for asking, Kim. That's great. All right, let's have a look at time and scheduling. The goal here for our young people is to try to help manage their time and sort of schedule their week, okay? So this is a prompt that I use. I say, and support our young people who are using this. I say, I've got classes at these times. And you can just put in whatever classes you've got across the week. You've got a chemistry class on Monday. You might have a theory class on Wednesday, a cooking class on Thursday. You put in whatever your weekly structure is. And then you can say things like, I concentrate best at these times. I concentrate best in the morning, or I concentrate best in the afternoon. And then you can say, give me a plan for my week that includes 10 hours of study. Also help me plan when I'm going to cook dinner. And I want you to book in 3 exercise sessions for me as well, and return that as a table. And then so I can put that into Chat GPT, and then it brings me back something like this. And this is exactly what it did. I put in a few other classes as well, and it's brought back a table where it's said, all right, here's the classes that you've got during the week. You also want to book in some study. It's even said, maybe study your engineering here, do a few practice questions here. Here's some time booked in to go for a walk, have a bit of exercise, and between 5 and 6, cook your dinner. Saturday, do a movie night. Sunday, prep a bit of meal and reset for the week ahead. And you can do whatever you want with this. You can customize it. Again, it could be working with a young person to say, hey, let's get your week planned out. Let's get your fortnight ready, and pop in all the things that they need to do or that they would like to do. And it can help to plan for that. There's also a lot of like specialist apps out there that just target this type of thing. Timo is one. It's a really nice, very visual, like time management app that you can get on mobile and desktop. It creates visual timelines for your week, checklists and reminders. It has a subscription attached to it, so I'll just mention that. But it's worth having a look at. And this little one over here, again, it's just a free week planner app that I built that you can access on the website that does just like that ChatGPT weekly planner does. So let's have a look at a couple more before we reach 8 o'clock. I'm a really big fan, and anyone who has heard me talk about AI know that I really love the voice mode in ChatGPT that lets you have a voice conversation. And I plan my weeks and plan my days by talking to ChatGPT of a morning. So I'll go for a walk. I'll say, hey, I've got 5 meetings on across the day. I also need to, pick the kids up from school. And I mean, that's me as an adult, but our young people can do the same. They can have a chat, say, here's what I've got on for the day. I need to make sure that I make this appointment. I've got a doctor's appointment on Thursday. Help me to plan this out. How can I get it all done? And it will help you. It has that conversation. It brings back different ideas and strategies. And then when you finish the voice chat, it's all there available as text that you can then use to reference when you're planning your week. So I really love the voice mode of some of these AI apps. It's definitely worth a look. I did a little talk about AI and that voice chat mode for neurodivergence that's up on the website as well, if you'd like to have a little look later. All right, a couple of last ones before we hit 8 o'clock. My time management's not been too bad. I'm almost there. So we'll just do a few quick ones. Working memory. I love Otter, which is an audio lecture transcriber. And, these days, lots of lecturers are already recording and transcribing their lectures at TAFE and uni. But if they don't, it could be worth, the young person checking with the lecturer, am I allowed to record this? Because it'll really help me later when I'm studying to go back over what's been said and review that. If the lecturer is recorded, you can even just drop that into Otter and it will transcribe it to text. And then you can have that to look at and review, pop into ChatGPT, ask questions about the lecture. That's really helpful. Notebook LM is a Google product that does the same thing in terms of you can drop in notes, audio, anything that you've got from study, and it will organize it and create study questions, create little study sheets for you, all sorts of great stuff to support that working memory. Metacognition, that idea of thinking about our thinking and also being motivated and knowing how to start a task, having that motivation to actually get started. Someone wrote to me the other week and they said that they're neurodivergent. They have a lot of trouble telling themselves to get started on a task. So what they do is they say to their AI app, help me pretend that I'm a secret agent. I want to create a scenario where I'm really motivated to find the assignment instructions, for my next project. Keep it simple, help me get in the mood, and give me tips to help to solve this mission. And then AI comes back to them and says, okay, secret agent Smith, you need to find the assessment instructions for this project. We need to find when it's due. This is of utmost importance. And it creates like a fantasy scenario that helps them get into the mood and sort of get a bit motivated for that. So that sort of playful, role playing side of this is really interesting as well, that young people can get into. And the final thing I'll mention is with regards to emotional regulation. I'm a big fan of spoon theory, of this idea of allocating spoons of energy across the day and considering how much energy you've got to put towards certain things. For our young people, when they're moving into tertiary education, they might be moving out of home. Just knowing how much energy they can commit to different parts of life is really important. I've got a spoon theory calculator that uses AI that lets you put in all the things you're going to do across the day and tells you how much energy of your spoons that might use up, and it helps you to plan what you can do in a reasonable amount of time. So there's a link up on the website as well for that. So I hope that's been a little bit of an overview of how AI can support some of these executive functioning your sort of needs that come up for our young people as they're studying, as they're getting into that next phase of education. And again, just a reminder that all of those links and things are up there. Will said that there'll be a recording of this shared as well. So I didn't do too bad for time, Will, I think. Thanks very
You
much.
did pretty well, mate. Considering I did go over a little bit of time, I think you're spot on, mate. So you did really well. But look, thank you so much. Now, what we will do, pretty much we can take some questions and answers now. But if you want to shoot off, that's fine. Or if you'd like to stay back and listen to some of the questions that might be asked, or some of the answers that Craig's going to give, please stay back. But more than anything, I would just like to say our next one is going to be held on the 15th of the 7th with our special guest, Moraine Power, that's going to talk about neurodivergent youth, pathways from education to employment. Okay, so please check that out. But look, if you've got some questions, please put it into the chat and we can shoot off some answers there. What do you reckon, Craig?
Yeah, sounds good. Absolutely.
Okay, I did see one here. Tamara, can sorry, I did see something up here before. Where was it? Here we go. Yeah. So, Tamara, is the voice mode on ChatGPT through a paid subscription? That sounds awesome. Thanks.
That's great. And I think I saw that someone else put in an answer for that, which is great too. So you can use the voice mode on ChatGPT in free mode. It does limit the amount of conversations that you can have with that in free mode. But in saying that, it also limits you in the paid mode to an hour each day. I'm not sure exactly of the limits on the free version, but it's certainly worth testing out to see if it works for you. Some people, don't love talking to their computer and having it talk back, so it can take a bit of getting used to. For me, I've jumped that hurdle. I love it. And I'll say too, just on that, I've got a friend of mine, his daughter really struggles with like tidying her room and keeping on top of the organization of her room. And she uses it because she talks to it, and you can also turn on the camera in ChatGPT, and it looks around your room, and it looks at her room and says, okay, here's what we're going to do. You're going to pick up your clothes off the floor, put them in a clothes basket. Then once you've done that, let's move on to step 2. So she actually uses it to help, like, not only have a conversation, but help her to tidy her room as well. So it's worth having a play around. There's
And
lots
sorry,
of
Craig, and
possibilities.
didn't you say on that as well that does it do it in a certain voice, like a Harry Potter voice as well, or something like that?
Yeah, well, she has like, she chooses it to be like particular characters, and it doesn't actually do a like a Harry Potter voice, but it's the personality, of the character. So it'll you could you can say be like Harry Potter or be like, you know, Cookie Monster from Sesame Street, and it'll get into the character and the personality, which again for some of our young people that's really motivating and fun and yeah, it's quite a good little
Yeah,
thing.
totally, totally, totally. Got another one here. Thanks, Craig. You're awesome. We definitely know you're awesome. Do you have any tools slash suggestions to be able to help plan and prioritize workload? So multiple projects, assignment. Is ChatGPT the best option?
Okay, so that's a really nice question, because that's not just about breaking a task down into its smaller steps, but it's also saying you've got multiple projects happening. How can you prioritize those? Do you know? I would actually recommend something else, and there are lots of options out there, but Lauren, I use a platform called Notion, and Notion is becoming quite popular in both like professional sense for project management, but also for students in tertiary education. And what Notion does is lets you essentially, in a very free way, make lots of different folders or little spaces to put your notes. And it's got AI built in, and that AI can then help talk to those different folders and those different projects, and can start to simplify and like prioritize some of those tasks. Within ChatGPT, it's got a similar feature called projects, and that tries to do the same. But I'd check out Notion. If you look up Notion and there's a free version you can have a play with, I find that very useful.
Now, Kim's just got something here. Do you know how open is TAFE to using AI? We may encourage using these options. However, this supported in tertiary education? And I might throw my hat in the ring on this one
Yeah,
here.
go for it.
What you may find is it really does depend on the organization. You've got, I've come against some organizations that are very good with that type of stuff and very open to it, where you may have others, and even in TAFE as well, who may not be as open to it. We can see that Leslie, who's one of our advisory board members, they do use Copilot quite often in TAFE there. But what we are finding is that, especially in the tertiary space or even within the vocational space, is that it's still a little bit of a not a hot topic, a bit of a scary sort of topic, if that makes sense there. So I think what they're probably looking for is certain things in place to be able to safeguard types of things, rather than someone just using it to go do a whole assessment instead of doing that work. So it's getting there. It's just finding out who, and this is a big thing with Neurodiversity Academy. We want to actually identify who's using the best technology to really help these students and so forth there. Craig, did you want to add on to that one at all, mate?
I'd just reinforce what you said, Will. And the other thing, Kim, I think, is that it is very varied as to different people's comfort there, like Will just said. But my approach is that I talk about it in terms of tech accessibility. Like I say, it's the same thing that we would have different tech accessibility to support dyslexia, to support vision needs, to support hearing and sensory. Like these are tech tools to support the personalization of these tools to give our students the access that they need. And again, like Will just said, we're not, I'm not saying to students and families and tertiary education, oh, just let the students do all of their work in ChatGPT, let it do their assignment for them. I'm saying, let's look at it from an accessibility standpoint. And if we can use a tool that breaks an assignment instruction down into smaller parts that makes it manageable for the young person, I think that's a conversation that we should have, because I think that's a really useful supportive tool that can really be the difference between success and not succeeding for some people. So I think those are the terms that the conversation should be had around.
Yeah, no, awesome stuff. Now, Rachel's just come through, brilliant stuff. Just wondering if presenting these tools to students as helpful resources to guide their process, process and study, would you offer any caution around privacy, risk, data, etc.? Not sure what the current thinking is on this at the moment. Thanks.
Absolutely, Rachel. And we do know that this is a really changing, the space is changing rapidly all the time. But certainly the students that I've worked with, we talk a lot about sort of this safeguarding. So we do talk about privacy. I say not to be putting your name and personal details into these systems, even though it's very unclear actually where that data goes and how it's used. We still want to be sensible about not putting our privacy in. Certainly in a school environment, for example, we don't put the personal details of students in. And I think so that side of it is something that we should have conversations with to make sure from a cyber safety standpoint, we're understanding that AI is just like social media. It's just like other platforms that we need to be guarded around what we share there. The other side of it is probably from an ethics standpoint. We do want to have those conversations with students about ethics and about a bit like I said a moment ago with regards to tech accessibility, how much is too much? Because what I'm proposing in this webinar is there are really genuine uses of AI to help us to structure our time, to help us to simplify the understanding of tasks. But we don't want to then have AI do everything for us. We need to, it'd be like going to the gym and getting AI to operate all the weights for us and to run the treadmill for us. It's like, no, you need to do this, or your muscles won't get stronger. You won't get the benefit from the treadmill. So I think these are conversations we need to keep having with our young people as the tools keep changing.
Totally, totally. And Kim's just come through again. There are some incredible apps out there, like what you have shown. However, there's a huge gap in providing the education and explicit teaching for those who do not have the initiative, intellect, or confidence to navigate best use. Are there services in post school who will teach best use of these apps?
I'll be honest, Kim, I don't know of any services in post school who are doing that sort of instruction. I'm feeling like platforms like this that Will's got are a really good sort of community base to start to have these conversations. But I think it is hopefully about people recognizing what these tools can do and having the supports in place to really guide those conversations. So short answer, no. Long answer, I know, but I'd like to see it happening more often. So if we can
So,
find ways to do that,
well,
for sure.
I'll actually chime in on that. So, with Neurodiversity Academy, once we do get a lot of the organizations onto our platform, so our platform's going to be similar to, say, Open Universities Australia. So, when we sign up a student through our platform to one of our neuro inclusive education providers, what we do want to provide for those people signing up through us are little things like this. So, what type of tech's out there? How can they use it? What are some things they can take from the education that they're learning into the workplace and so forth, their type of thing. So, we want to provide that as like we want to give it to people as part of signing up through our platforms and stuff like that. We may look at a membership method where we will have things like that, which could be interesting as well there. NDI, oh, hang on, I'll put this up. NDIS should be funding training of these apps. Imagine how much would be saved on OT and other allied. Look, totally agree with you there. Totally agree. Would
Yeah.
love to see that happen.
I was just chatting to some therapists earlier this afternoon, Kim, and they are really interested in how these apps are going to help to save time, to
Mhm.
help families create supports, so that that's not necessarily going, all the therapy time is not going towards that. There can be other, uses for that. So I think you're right. I don't know where the NDIS will come into this space, but certainly therapy is very interested, and I'm already seeing some really interesting use cases where therapists are recording themselves sort of thinking through plans for students and generating reports really quickly. And I think that's, yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch what happens there.
Yeah, cool. Well, look, I think that's everyone. Thank you so much for all of those great questions. Craig, you were a legend. Thank you so much for coming today, my man. I really appreciate your time. It's always a good chat when you and I sit down. And thank you so much for today. Yeah.
Thank you, Will. I really appreciate it. And thanks for all the great questions and everyone who's attended this session. It's been lots of fun.